The story of Israel-Palestine is a tale of two nations, intertwined with history, culture, and conflict. These lands have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of religions, and the struggles for self-determination. Hello viewers, and welcome to a journey through the tumultuous history of Israel-Palestine. This video delves into the historical events, conflicts, and the current state of affairs in this region. We'll provide insights and knowledge to help you understand the complex dynamics at play. So without further ado, let's dive into the video and subscribe to the channel. In early October 2023, a significant and escalating conflict erupted between Israel and Hamas, the militant Islamist group that has maintained control over the Gaza Strip since 2006. This sudden escalation began with a wave of rocket attacks by Hamas militants targeting Israeli territory. These rockets not only caused damage, but also led to casualties among Israeli soldiers and civilians. Moreover, they'd resulted in the taking of several hostages, further intensifying the crisis. The attack took Israel by surprise, and in response, the Israeli government quickly mobilized a retaliatory operation. Just one day after the initial attack on October 7, the Israeli cabinet formally declared a state of war against Hamas. This declaration was swiftly followed by a directive from the defense minister to the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, to initiate a complete siege of Gaza. This marked a significant escalation in the conflict, as a blockade of this nature has profound implications for the people in Gaza, who rely on the flow of goods, services, and aid for their daily lives. Since the outbreak of hostilities, both sides have engaged in daily rocket exchanges, which have resulted in further casualties and destruction on both sides of the border. In response to the mounting tensions, Israel issued an evacuation order for more than 1 million Palestinian civilians residing in the northern regions of Gaza. The order was intended to prepare for the possibility of a ground assault, underscoring the gravity of the situation. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached a critical point, with shortages of essential resources such as water, fuel, and supplies. The situation is exacerbated by an Israeli aid blockade, which has further strained the living conditions of Gaza's population. The blockade has drawn international attention and concern, with organizations and countries calling for its alleviation to ensure that the civilian population does not suffer unnecessarily. The conflict has also raised the specter of regional spillover. As tensions escalate in the region, cross-border strikes have occurred, impacting not only Gaza but also neighboring areas, including Lebanon and Syria. The potential for the conflict to spread and involve other parties heightens the complexity of the situation and the potential for further instability. The events of early October 2023 have underscored the intractable and deeply rooted nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The immediate consequences of this escalation are visible in the casualties, destruction, and suffering experienced by civilians on both sides. Background: the Israeli-Palestinian conflict dates back to the end of the 19th century. In 1947, the United Nations adopted Resolution 181, known as the Partition Plan, which sought to divide the British Mandate of Palestine into Arab and Jewish states. On May 14, 1948, the State of Israel was created, sparking the First Arab-Israeli War. The war ended in 1949 with Israel's victory, but 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, and the territory was divided into three parts: the State of Israel, the West Bank of the Jordan River, and the Gaza Strip. Over the following years, tensions rose in the region, particularly between Israel and Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. Following the 1956 Suez Crisis and Israel's invasion of the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria signed mutual defense pacts in anticipation of a possible mobilization of Israeli troops. In June 1967, following a series of maneuvers by Egyptian President Abdel Gamal Nasser, Israel preemptively attacked Egyptian and Syrian air forces, starting the Six-Day War. After the war, Israel gained territorial control over the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. 6 years later, in what is referred to as the Yom Kippur War or the October War, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise two-front attack on Israel to regain their lost territory. The conflict did not result in significant gains for Egypt, Israel, or Syria. But Egyptian President Anwar al-Sadat declared the war a victory for Egypt as it allowed Egypt and Syria to negotiate over previously ceded territory. Finally, in 1979, following a series of ceasefires and peace negotiations, representatives from Egypt and Israel signed the Camp David Accords, a peace treaty that ended the 30-year conflict between Egypt and Israel. Even though the Camp David Accords improved relations between Israel and its neighbors, the question of Palestinian self-determination and self-governance remained unresolved. In 1987, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza Strip rose up against the Israeli government in what is known as the First Intifada. The 1993 Oslo I Accords mediated the conflict, setting up a framework for the Palestinians to govern themselves in the West Bank and Gaza, and enabled mutual recognition between the newly established Palestinian Authority and Israel's government. In 1995, the Oslo II Accords expanded on the first agreement, adding provisions that mandated the complete withdrawal of Israel from 6 cities and 450 towns in the West Bank. In 2000, sparked in part by Palestinian grievances over Israel's control over the West Bank, a stagnating peace process, and former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's visit to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. In September 2000, Palestinians launched the Second Intifada, which would last until 2005. In response, the Israeli government approved the construction of a barrier wall around the West Bank in 2002, despite opposition from the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. Factionalism among the Palestinians flared up when Hamas won the Palestinian Authority's parliamentary elections in 2006, deposing longtime majority party Fatah. This gave Hamas, a political and militant movement inspired by the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood, control of the Gaza Strip. Gaza is a small piece of land on the Mediterranean Sea that borders Egypt to the south and has been under the rule of the semi-autonomous Palestinian Authority since 1993. The United States and European Union, among others, did not acknowledge Hamas' electoral victory, as the group has been considered a terrorist organization by Western governments since the late 1990s. Following Hamas' seizure of control, violence broke out between Hamas and Fatah. Between 2006 and 2011, a series of failed peace talks and deadly confrontations culminated in an agreement to reconcile. Fatah entered into a unity government with Hamas in 2014. After a wave of violence between Israelis and Palestinians in 2015, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas of Fatah announced that Palestinians would no longer be bound by the territorial divisions created by the Oslo Accords. In March and May of 2018, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip conducted weekly demonstrations at the border between the Gaza Strip and Israel. The final protest coincided with the 70th anniversary of the Nakba, the Palestinian exodus that accompanied Israeli independence. While most of the protesters were peaceful, some stormed the perimeter fence and threw rocks and other objects. According to the United Nations, 183 demonstrators were killed and more than 6,000 were wounded by live ammunition. The tense political atmosphere resulted in a return to disunity between Fatah and Hamas, with Mahmoud Abbas' Fatah party controlling the Palestinian Authority from the West Bank and Hamas de facto ruling the Gaza Strip. This remained largely true throughout the late 2010s and early 2020s, despite Abbas' efforts to bring the Palestinian people together under the Palestinian Authority. In May of 2018, fighting once again broke out between Hamas and the IDF in what became the worst period of violence since 2014. Before reaching a ceasefire, militants in Gaza fired over 100 rockets into Israel. Israel responded with strikes on more than 50 targets in Gaza during the 24-hour flare-up. The Donald J. Trump administration set achieving an Israeli-Palestinian deal as a foreign policy priority. In 2018, the Trump administration canceled funding for the Human Relief and Works Agency, which provides aid to Palestinian refugees, and relocated the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a reversal of a long-standing U.S. policy. The decision to move the U.S. embassy was met with applause from the Israeli leadership, but was condemned by Palestinian leaders and others in the Middle East and Europe. Israel considers the complete and united Jerusalem its capital, while Palestinians claim PDF East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. In January 2020, the Trump administration released its long-awaited Peace to Prosperity plan, which was rejected by Palestinians due to its support for future Israeli annexation of settlements in the West Bank and control over an undivided Jerusalem. In August and September 2020, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and then Bahrain agreed to normalize relations with Israel, making them only the third and fourth countries in the region, following Egypt in 1979 and Jordan in 1994, to do so. The agreements, named the Abraham Accords, came more than 18 months after the United States hosted Israel and several Arab states for ministerial talks in Warsaw, Poland, about the future of peace in the Middle East. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas of Fatah rejected the accords, as did Hamas. The complex and deeply rooted Israeli-Palestinian conflict reached a critical juncture in October 2020 when an Israeli court issued a contentious ruling. This ruling decreed that several Palestinian families residing in Sheikh Jarrah, a neighborhood in East Jerusalem, would be evicted from their homes by May 2021, with their properties to be handed over to Jewish families. The decision sparked immediate outrage and led to a series of legal battles, protests, and the painful displacement of Palestinian families in Jerusalem. In February 2021, as the eviction date drew nearer, several Palestinian families from Sheikh Jarrah filed an appeal to the court's ruling. This appeal set in motion a wave of protests, drawing attention not only to the ongoing legal battle surrounding property ownership, but also to the broader issue of Palestinian displacement in the region. In late April 2021, Palestinians began taking to the streets of Jerusalem to voice their opposition to the impending evictions. This initial expression of discontent quickly grew into a more organized and sustained movement. Residents of Sheikh Jarrah, along with other activists, initiated nightly sit-ins as a form of peaceful protest against the court's decision. These sit-ins attracted local and international attention, highlighting the determination of the Palestinian community to resist forced displacement. The situation escalated further in early May when the court ruled in favor of the evictions. In response, the protests expanded, with a growing number of demonstrators taking to the streets. Israeli police deployed force to suppress the protests, leading to clashes and a significant increase in tensions in the city. On May 7, the situation took a dramatic turn when violence erupted at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem. This holy site, significant to both Muslims and Jews, became a focal point of conflict. Israeli police used stun grenades, rubber bullets, and water cannons against the protesters, resulting in hundreds of Palestinians being wounded. The clashes at Al-Aqsa ignited anger and frustration not only among Palestinians in Jerusalem, but also across the broader Palestinian territories and among Arab communities in the region. The violence further intensified following the clashes in Jerusalem's Old City. Adding to the volatile atmosphere was the celebration of Jerusalem Day, an event that commemorates the reunification of Jerusalem after the Six-Day War in 1967. On May 10, after several consecutive days of violence throughout Jerusalem and the use of both lethal and non-lethal force by Israeli police, Hamas, the militant group governing Gaza, along with other Palestinian militant groups, launched hundreds of rockets into Israeli territory. In response, Israel carried out artillery bombardments and airstrikes, initially targeting Hamas, other militant groups, and their infrastructure, including tunnels and rocket launchers. However, as the conflict continued, Israel's aerial campaign expanded to include non-military targets such as residential buildings, media headquarters, refugee facilities, and healthcare facilities. This broadening of targets drew international condemnation, with concerns raised about the disproportionate use of force and its impact on civilian populations. The devastating conflict lasted for 11 days, resulting in significant loss of life and destruction. On May 21, 2021, a ceasefire was brokered, thanks to the mediation efforts of Egypt. The agreement brought a temporary halt to the hostilities, but the underlying issues of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remained unresolved. The toll of the conflict was steep, with over 250 Palestinians killed and nearly 2,000 others wounded. Tragically, the conflict also claimed the lives of at least 13 Israelis. The financial damage to Gaza was estimated to be in the tens of millions of dollars, and the United Nations reported that more than 72,000 Palestinians were displaced due to the fighting. The ceasefire brought a semblance of relief, but it also served as a stark reminder of the urgent need for a comprehensive and lasting resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one that addresses the historical, political, and humanitarian dimensions of this deeply rooted and multifaceted issue. Concerns. The outbreak of hostilities between Israel and Hamas on October 7, 2023, triggered a cascade of significant international developments, which underscore the complexity of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and its far-reaching implications for the Middle East and beyond. Immediately following the declaration of war by Israel against the terrorist group Hamas, the United States, under the leadership of President Joe Biden, made a resounding statement of support for Israel. This support took multiple forms. On the very day that the conflict commenced, the United States announced its commitment to send renewed shipments of arms to Israel. This reaffirmed the enduring alliance and cooperation between the United States and Israel, highlighting the strong bond between the two nations. The international community, recognizing the gravity of the situation, called for a response. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting to address the renewed violence. However, despite diplomatic efforts, member nations failed to reach a consensus statement. This failure reflects the deeply rooted and multifaceted nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which defies easy resolution. The outbreak of hostilities raised immediate concerns about the safety and well-being of civilians in both Israel and the Palestinian territories. International organizations expressed their apprehension for the safety of those held hostage by militants in Gaza, underscoring the urgent need to protect the most vulnerable populations affected by the conflict. Tragically, the first 2 days of fighting resulted in significant loss of life, with approximately 800 Israelis and 500 Palestinians losing their lives. This devastating toll only further emphasizes the urgency of finding a peaceful resolution to the ongoing conflict. The conflict also prompted concerns about potential regional implications. While initial reports did not immediately confirm direct Iranian involvement in assisting Hamas with the October 7 attack, Iran has long maintained a patronage relationship with Hamas and other extremist groups across the Middle East. This raised concerns that the conflict might signal Iran's readiness to escalate its malign influence in the region's various conflicts. Experts also expressed worry about the potential involvement of Hezbollah, another extremist group with Iranian backing. On October 9, reports emerged that the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, were targeting locations within Lebanon, where Hezbollah is based. The purpose of this cross-border operation was not explicitly clarified in the Israeli statement, leaving room for speculation. Recent developments. In late December 2022, Israel witnessed the formation of its most far-right and religious administration in history. Led by Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu and his Likud party, this coalition government included 2 ultra-Orthodox parties and 3 far-right parties, notably the Religious Zionism Party, closely associated with the West Bank settler movement. To secure a majority, Netanyahu made concessions to his far-right partners, raising concerns. The government's focus on expanding Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank drew criticism, both domestically and internationally. Additionally, it endorsed policies allowing discrimination against LGBTQ+ individuals on religious grounds. In May 2023, a vote limiting judicial oversight sparked further debate and concern. Violence between Israelis and Palestinians saw a significant resurgence in 2022, continuing into the first 9 months of 2023. The West Bank became a hotspot for clashes, with daily Israeli incursions. Israel's approval for 5,000 new settler homes in June 2023, along with other settlements in Palestinian territory, was widely considered illegal under international law. The Israeli military escalated operations, including actions like a dual raid on the Al-Aqsa Mosque and missile attacks on the Jenin refugee camp, drawing international criticism. In May 2023, Israel engaged in a 5-day battle with Gazan militants, involving missile launches from both sides. In July, a large-scale raid on the Jenin refugee camp resulted in casualties. In October 2023, a significant escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict occurred, with implications for the region and beyond. So this was our today's video. I hope you all like it. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We will be back soon with a new video. Till then, keep supporting and take care.